to Windward Community College and to Out Loud in the library. And thank you for coming out and supporting the arts and literature. So I'm Susan Lee St. John. I coordinate the Out Loud program. And Out Loud is a collaboration between the library and the Language Arts Department. And it's to bring real working artists here to kind of, enrich the community, enrich our student community. And I want to thank our librarians, Ellie Sachin and Christy Laws, who welcome us into this space. So I'm really pleased to have two writers here, Susan Schultz and Gary Pak, and they're going to read from their recently published work. So after they read, we're going to have time for discussion and questions. So if a question occurs to you, I have a little card. You can, write it down. And of course, you can just raise your hand and ask it, or you can ask someone to read it for you. But anyway, let me start by introducing our first reader, who is Susan. So Susan M. Schultz retired as professor of English at UH Mānoa after over 30 years of teaching. Her most recent books include Meditations, December 2019 to December 2020, and you're going to be reading from that, and Lilith Walks. And forthcoming is, did I pronounce that right?
Lilith, yeah.
Lilith, okay.
Lilith, my dog.
Oh, your dog.
My dog.
Dog. It's also the name of a park, right? Okay. Anyway.
It's my dog.
Oh, very nice. And forthcoming, so coming out soon, is War Diary.
Except that SPD's death destroyed it.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, that's too bad.
So.
Small versus distributors.
Oh, okay.
So that's not coming out, but there is something called I and Eucalyptus about me and a tree. It's coming out.
Oh, okay. You and a tree.
Me and a tree.
Okay.
With photos of the tree.
Okay. Me and a tree.
Me and a tree.
Yeah. Okay, great. We'll look for that one too. Okay. So she's also written and edited books of literary criticism, and she's an active reviewer of poetry books. Susan founded Tin Fish Press in 1995, and she was editor for nearly a quarter century. She now spends her time writing and taking photographs in Kaneohe. So if you can welcome Susan Schultz, please.
Thank you, Susan. It gets very confusing.
It does.
Ask this Susan about her Ken Kesey story sometime. It's wonderful. It has to do with Pakalolo and everything. Okay, so, and it's funny because one member of the audience is someone I see walking on Kahikili every day, and I've almost run into him a couple times, and I keep telling him, where's something bright, and he's not. So there. So, okay, and this is the Kansas City Monarchs. It was Jackie Robinson Day the other day.
Mariners.
Go Dodgers.
Go Cardinals. Okay, anyway, thank you, Susan, and the librarians, and everybody who came either because they wanted to or they were obliged to by their teacher. Do we all remember the year 2020? Okay, so just a few key words here. COVID. I was teaching sonnets at the time. Trump. There was a murder by Diamond Head. A guy killed his landlady and 2 cops. There was George Floyd's death. There was Black Lives Matter. There were statues of Confederates pulled down all over the country. And there was Zoom, that new world of being in little boxes like Hollywood squares. So Meditations is a chronological trip in my head through the year 2020 mostly. There are 2 kinds of meditation. One is the kind of meditation where you look at very ordinary things and you try to find wisdom in them. Second kind is Buddhist meditation where you sit quietly and you don't stop thinking, but you stop taking it so seriously. so it just kind of floats around. So these pieces, which are in prose but are poetic, are sort of both of those things put together. Lots of floating. Think of them as music, otherwise there might be some anxiety over the fact that they're wandering a lot. So I'll start later on with one that sort of explains what I'm doing. June 12, 2020. The lotus bud is nearly as lovely as the blossom to be. Flowers too have their practice. Our sunflower came out petal by petal, and none were yellow. The brown-orange flower winked at us until it showed its full surprise at having opened. Its inner circle filled with bright dots, the outer like bird feathers, but no cape. The flower is not a royal plant, but ordinary. I like the dailiness of this work, the struggle to get inside the moment that hangs like water droplets on a brown rain after hard rain, to hear the petals hinge as it opens, or the cat that scratches to get in. This is a poetics. Or a poem, and then another poem. I'm supposed to widen my focus, zooming back from a yellow dot on the flower's face to a garden of pots, to mountains, to island. But macro feels better at 61, like finding a droplet in the ocean held fast by water pressure. The foam is either salt or detergent. You don't want to know because it scares you. Scab torn from skin, we see fresh blood beneath it. Everyone's freshly converted. Long lines to pull on the rope around Stonewall Jackson's neck. The question of where in history we are, inside or outside or in the salt wound of it, means little. Malcolm Little became X, escorted by cops from the scene of his assassination. We want our martyrs to be saints. The lives of the saints are in their absence. That reference to being 61, I was young then. Yes.
Still young.
Okay, let me see. Let me find, Gary said I should pick ones with strong images, but I don't know. Okay, so this one is from January 20th, 2020, and in this poem there will be mention of bushfires in Australia. That was an early sign or mid-sign of climate change. White men marching around in Richmond, Virginia, and there's also a reference to tense shifts. I was teaching at the time, and my students were wildly changing their tenses. The world ends in hail and dust. No more a consistent tense that moves from present to present, but a tense confabulation. It's a powerful move, I tell my students, but you need to know where you're going. It's not that we're all living in the present, rather that its fragile shell so easily shatters. Memory loses all category, as if the past only rewound the present. My mother confused my story with hers, my husband with hers. Who's to say we were not all on that plane, huge orange dust storm sweeping toward us, enveloping our drone witness, bearing material prophecy in its grit. The dust cloud is 186 miles long and moves at 66 miles per hour. It crests over Dubbo and Broken Hill, composed of earth from farms in New South Wales. Look at the earth, my father would say, meaning the orange clay that only broke when you took your spade to it. The earth was that color in Vietnam, a vet once told me. But now it rises as if it had wings, and its poet wasn't always so stoned he heard angels singing, their verbs blooming dutifully at the ends of sentences, where they propel us back to the beginning, no matter the tense. Our witnesses watch for us, drone hovering over Diamond Head to see how many houses burned on the first clear day in weeks. It was such a beautiful day. Without uttering the word, my students talk about mindfulness, this being in the present, being with, not coming after. Legions of bearded white men descend on Richmond with their guns. One chides a younger man for using the word masturbation. We're here to show our love for each other, he says. And the younger man avers, backing off. One wears a knitted American flag hat, the other an orange bandana. Love does not alter where alteration finds, is bronzed like another horseman in another Instagram photo. Yesterday I saw Ronald Reagan on a horse, as still as a church mouse. The drone came back to the park like a boomerang, though after the third news story it's running in the present, coming back and back to spill its video record. She read out loud from To the Finland Station, sentences unspooling like craps tapes, students giggling at their heft. At the Atocha station, I thought I saw old women selling bats on sticks, suspicious that Ashbery's poem was an act of realism, not experiment. There was a plaque for the intervening dead. Some species may be rendered extinct by the bushfires. To be going extinct, what tense is that? The continuous perishing. Okay, Lilith is my dog. Sometimes I write short ones, so this is a breather. March 3rd, 2020. The president, that was Trump, the president, we're told, is deeply engaged. He asks about the market all the time. That we believe. Lilith's spiky ball, a coronavirus, plastic sun wakes into needles of orange light. April 11th, 2020. The question of grief. She argues the word is being misused. Did we not grieve for the 9/11 jumpers before they hit the ground? An edifice stands, but we see it shift, begin to fall. Those inside are still alive, but we've begun to lose them. This happens on repeat on the news. He said he watched the towers fall only once. I took that to mean he wasn't stained by repetition. Grief inflates until it pops. That's to get far away from the central facts. The virus kills thousands a day, but the president's TV ratings have gone up. His incompetence offers us relief from our grieving. Define immediate family, the immediate of time or immediate of space or immediate of blood or other kin. She loved her father but doesn't appear in his credits as she was step. He walked home late one night after a gig so she could buy shoes the next day. What we do for our later to be erased loves. Forgive us our daily nattering. Forgive the dog her bath in the sun, the cat his barf in the bowl, the other cat her pee on the blanket, and the other cat his claws in the screen door. Forgive us our sins of omission. The faces of ER doctors look at us through bruises their masks made. A Sharpied date lets you know how many times the mask has been worn. One doctor taped a photograph of himself on his jacket. All the dying man could see was a mask, inside a garbage bag. Did you get the jazz illusion, Gary? That was John Coltrane, who gave money for his stepdaughter to buy shoes. April 13th, 2020. Some of us have spiritual experiences. Others of us die. April 20th. The Chinese woman wearing a straw hat and black pants sings as she walks. An older couple stops at the curb to check their steps. Bryant chants "little roaches" as he kills them. They're social creatures, so he doesn't feel great. Birds skitter over a baseline of construction truck tires, power tools or saxophone scales. So many musicians dying now. A white woman leans out of a silver truck, clutching a sign about freedom. It's in the same font as all the others. A nurse in blue scrubs and a mask stands in the crosswalk blocking her way. "Go back to China," she yells. He's protecting the ambulance route into the hospital. To replaced from in our lexicon. We are free to infect each other. Funeral rites are difficult, what with social distancing. It's not the dead who scare us. Hyper-focus on the mossy wall to spot a lizard. Zoom in on a leaf growing through a gap beside the lanai. Modulate your ear to listen for the shema thrush. This is not trauma, but self-defense, this alertness to detail. We quarantine ourselves from the news some days. It's not healthy for us. Our respiratory systems cannot handle another press conference. A former colleague's partner is in the ICU with pneumonia. I meditate with a group over Zoom. The teacher says, "Don't record the part where we only sit." A slight against silence, I think. The image of silence is still photograph. Lilith and I turned the corner to deposit her poop in green dumpster number 3 and came face to face with a hobby horse. Wonder if they ever fixed the springs on those things, Bryant wonders. They sure could pinch your fingers. This one is after Dogen, Zen philosopher, and is in reference to what's out that way. May 13th, 2020, the mountains, no matter that they walk, will outlast this human chaos. Okay. Lilith is my dog. We have 3 cats, the last of whom is named Claude, a perpetual kitten. May 22nd. Also, there's a reference to the Khmer Rouge in here. They were a Maoist communist group that took over Cambodia in the 70s and committed a horrible genocide. And one of the memoirs that came out of that was called "First They Killed My Father." Claude lies on 2 small black slippers this morning, pushes paws into the slots where feet fit, lies on one slipper, then flips on his back, grasps slipper to belly, rubs his gray face on the slipper's bottom, then covers it, grabs the other slipper, performs a somersault, looks back toward the door where other cats sometimes skulk, returns to the slipper. Were the slippers not plastic, his embrace would kill them. Khmer Rouge cadres wore slippers made of old tires when they killed her father. Memory is a Zoom background that slips in and out of a body. She filled her room with cells, kept losing her head to them, bodies with cells on top. It's hard to do 2 things at once on the screen. The one poet read with only one eyebrow and half a furrow showing. Another poet's selfie featured migrant gray eyebrow hairs. The practice of aging requires discipline, an old woman schlepping across a desert. She focuses on anything that is not sand, demented landscape of cactus and rock outcropping. That's what shows as new, as most important, as what we identify as most like ourselves. Change mind was her first favorite phrase in English. Change mind is what her grandmother did without meaning. We are without meaning to be. Watch yourself as you want to be in the world, then subtract reality from desire and want that too. May 26, 2020. This is when our daughter Radhika, who's a super soccer player, was at home because of COVID. I can't get away from the man in the park, the man who sat planted like a mirrored sea on a picnic bench, back bent, chin to chest. I returned. He was gone, white truck gone, blue lights gone. Closed reads the sign on the swing set, held up with yellow tape. My daughter kicks her soccer ball against a wall. An older man dribbling fakes out no one, stutter stepping to the hoop. Lilith reads scents on the concrete walk. In isolation, we make causes to mimic effects, or we get stuck on causes losing effects. I can't get away from the man in the park. His isolation fails to mime a two-person game. He's effect without cause, cause without name. His hurt is like the post-it note my cat attacks before he turns to bite his tail. That's a heavy story, a friend writes. Stories end when we arrive at their predicates, but the ordinary stops short, like a woman leaning over a cliff to count shades of blue in the English Channel. Her neighbor, who wears yellow pants, is an alien from the sky where dolphins swim. I resist her narrative, but admire the ending, love as sure as sonnets. I'm okay, he said. Words, aspiration, a flag to drive me off. That was at the Huimanu Park. Okay, I've got a bunch of them about George Floyd's death, but I thought I would just read this one, which you may recall that George Floyd was accused of passing a counterfeit $20 bill, and that's why the guy in the store called the cops. So suddenly I saw a picture of the Pope, for some reason, Francis, and I wondered what would happen if St. Francis had gone to buy something at the local store. June 10th, 2020. There was that time St. Francis used a suspect 20 to buy seed at the corner store. The guy behind the register called the cops, who arrived under cover of sirens. They blocked his exit, pulled out their handcuffs, fingered their batons, but they noted that St. Francis was a white saint, his skin tan from all of his do-goodery in the city parks. He drove a beat-up Fiat, but the inspection sticker was current. Someone had seen him cross the street, but he stayed inside the crosswalk. His old ghetto blaster pumped out Gregorian chants, but not too loudly. Children loved him. A couple danced off to the side in the shade. The cops warned him about forgers, gave him his bird seed, and let him wander off to talk to pigeons and sparrows. 1 minute. Okay. I will read. I will read one line from June 1st, 2020. The dead man's brother breathes grief in, sucking air and expelling it through his mask. If you want to know the end of the story, you can go to the shop, invest in the book. Anyway, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, well, thank you. That was wonderful. There's going to be a talk back after the end, so hold on to your questions. If you need a card, let me know. I want to introduce Gary now. Gary is Professor Emeritus of English at the University of Hawaiʻi at Mānoa. He's published 6 works of fiction. Kewalo Blues and Echoes is his first published collection of poems. His latest novel is Borderless. Besides writing, Gary's other creative passions are playing jazz piano and woodblock printing. So if you could welcome Gary.
I don't have a timer like Susan has. Okay, can I borrow you? How much do you charge?
$1 a minute, it's a 20-minute timer.
Oh.
You're not being counterfeit.
Thank you so much, Susan St. John, and I've heard Susan St. Martin and Susan St. Stewart, but it's Susan St. John for setting this up, and it's nice to see a lot of new faces, but also some faces I'm familiar with, and And thanks for Susan Susan Schultz. I got to say this, she's one of the main reasons why I got this book published. I wrote these poems in a matter of about, I think, 10 years, and I don't consider myself a poet. I just love to write poetry, and I put it in my black book, and I wrote most of these, in fact, all these poems when I was bike riding in Honolulu, in the Kewalo Basin area, Ala and just maybe in a couple years ago, I decided to kind of put it together, and no one wanted to publish it. But Susan had some ideas, and I also got to give a shout out to Susan because she's retired, and I said that during her retirement thing that she is really responsible for a lot of writers here in Hawaii, local writers and so on, to be published with Tin Fish and stuff. And I gotta praise you, I guess. Is that what it's called?
It's a little bit different.
So, and again, there's a lot of, some familiar faces, a lot of new faces like that. Desi, her grandmother was my history teacher, really a nice person, Mrs. Winning. Yeah. And Darwin was our student of ours, and now he's taken over Tin Fish, right, And then there's two guys back there. It's my old friends. We grew up together, in the same neighborhood, went to Kaneoe'el, and I'm making sure that you see them, you know who they are, because I'm not sure if they came here to applaud me or to harass me, okay? So I've known them since, we went to school together, kindergarten, man, Kaneoe Elementary School, man, from kindergarten. We were the first class to go from kindergarten all the way to 6th grade. And then Wayne and I, we left to ILH schools, but Melvin here, he stayed true to the community. He went to Castle. He graduated Castle Knights. Anyway, thanks for coming here. I guess I got to read, yeah? I can talk now. Okay, so this is another. So when I saw this photo from my neighbor's son is a surf photographer at Gavin, Hawaii, and when I saw it, I said, wow, this has to be in the cover. It's a fisherman, it's in the South Shore, South Shore of Oahu, and it just held me because this is a lot of ways. This is one of the themes of the kind of thing of fishing for something, or just observing the people around you and fishing and stuff. And I wrote these poems. I was taking care of my dad at the time too, and he would go to sleep at 8 o'clock at night, and it's too early for me, So I would just jump on my bike and just bike down the South Shore, Ala Moana, Kewalo Basin, all the way down to Chinatown even, and no one bothered me actually that night. I really enjoyed biking at night, I guess because I look kind of threatening or something. But it was really a great time, and I would just park myself on a wall, like in Kewalo's, and look out the surf, listen to the surf, and just pull up my book. And in the moonlight, I would just write a poem. And like I said, I never thought these would get published. They were just like pieces of me, coming together, trying to make sense of what was going on. I had some issues with our beloved English department, Don't get me wrong. I think being a professor at the University of Hawaiʻi was one of the best things I could ever have done, and stuff like that. I really enjoyed teaching, the research. Most of the people there, a few people were kind of this assholes. Sorry. Sorry. Oh, can you censor that out? I was going to say that, But anyway. That's how it is, and you got to deal with it. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't bad. So anyway, Kewalo Blues and Echoes. So I guess I better read, before I get myself into trouble, More trouble. So this is the first poem. It's called Number One. The tide is out tonight. And so the wind, the air, drawn out past the break, residual of a hot summer. Brother Kavika is lying on his side facing the sea, bicycle standing next to him. He was already dreaming with the stars and the fish meeting in the sea, this sea. Old white-haired woman fishing on the wall. What will this night bring? An endless spinning of your line? A patient waiting out of time that holds nothing for you or him. These poems are short, not like Susan's. Susan's goes on and on and on, novelistically. This poem is called Number 4. I always enjoy the sounds of the sea. At this edge of night, I imagine stars rolling like breakfast before me. I see them vanish in the dust of dawn. If there is one fear I have, it is not the fear of death, but the fear of witnessing time unchanged, a stalling of all things decaying. If this ever happens, then time will turn back, reverse itself. Then where will we all go? Perhaps the new age will be then, the old age and no age, and the yes. Or light might reverse itself, and no light will be all light. It will be something to see, the waves unbroken and returning to the void. Okay, this poem is called Number 6. Called Looney Tunes. It's Looney Tunes. Looney Tunes is a Disney. I'm not Disney. Walt Disney. How does this talk? Da, da, da. How does the song go? Da, 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 da. And what's it? Donald Duck comes on and says, "What? It's all right." No, Porky Pig comes out, right? Okay. Anyway, I call this. It's called Looney Tunes, I guess. It's Looney Tunes tonight. It's in the echo of the night that flies beyond the breakers of this long dawn. People stealing, talking trash, acting like it's a full moon, but it's not. The moon is high near the North Star, and it's a half moon. People should be only half crazy and not indecent at all. The fishermen should be hauling in big leaps rather than suffering the weight. Oh, it's Looney Tunes tonight. The waves are breaking one way and crashing in another. Foam spreads on the face of the next wave. Is it going in or out? It's Looney Tunes, this blinking of colors telling me it's time to pack my pen and ride off to the sanity of Rabasipla land. This whole thing about Looney Tunes, I don't know, when I was younger, I used to actually work at the state hospital in Kaneohe, I was they called me a paramedical assistant, but I was like a jail guard. I don't know, I had to fight the patients. I had a couple pants torn off me and stuff like that, It's crazy, crazy. Oh. Anyway, but when there was a full moon, actually, patients would get kind of, edgy kind of thing. And it was kind of, I thought it was a metaphysical thing, but it really happened, a lot of times. The other times, too, was during the holidays like in Christmas. Oh, it was the saddest time because, no one would come and visit them, And here I am, I'm working, trying to take care of them, and I'll tell you, man, people, the people there, the hospital, they were really terribly depressed. Anyway, why am I saying all these things? Because this Looney Tunes. At Kewalo, this is number 7. At Kewalo's, ocean heals the spirit. Its vastness pinpoints a place for your soul. Boat goes in, then out. Air enters and exits, and gives wonder, direction, and caution for what comes today, tomorrow, yesterday. Waves break and leave, no impression but dry into salt that toughens body, preserves your spirit and passion. is number 8. My back is to the ocean. From ground zero, a paper tiger shoots up into the Hawaiian blue. Some white pilot in the service of the Almighty who looks howly, who would kill nameless people in his name. How can an honest poor people struggle justly against a machine whose one part, a wing, is worth a treasury that could feed an African nation for a year? Peace man's back is turned to the ocean. I pedal past him again. This time he is studying a newspaper, not strumming his weather-worn white Telecaster. I wonder where he thinks he is when he twangs a rusty chord. Is it a hopeful sound? So when I would go also to the park, Kewalo Basin, all those parks like that in the daytime too. And you just get to meet the people there, you know the people. You don't talk stories with them, You just know who they are. And one of those guys was this, I guess, homeless guy, And he would, I think he had a house, but he would, every day, he would ride his bike and just put himself at the one corner of the park, and he would take out his rusty Telecaster and just twang it around, and sometimes he'd read the paper. He wouldn't say anything, So, I would always pass by, and he wouldn't look at me, but I would nod my head and bike on like that. So, you get to know these people in the park, and they start calling you at nighttime, but you just drive past and stuff, So anyway, this is number 10. The water's drawn out far, exposing dead rocks. The fishermen are out. What they are going for, who knows? There's a hibachi firing and the sounds of two waves making love. And the universe seems to be about day and night, night and day, and no in-betweens, and no reflection, and no joy of seeing new things and new wonders, the joy of sound and sense, play and rest, the crackling of charcoal and grilling of dried squid. So when the red lights blink and the green, whose sanctity are they plotting? Not here, not there, but where? Beauty is not in the sharp lines of absence. There is much to see in the in-betweens and the mixings thereafter. Okay. Number 12. I'm a crab. There's those black crabs on the rocks on the coast. I'm a crab crawling over black rock. Can you see me like I see you? Push and pull of waves on rocks, rocks wearing away. One thing no one can catch is a wave. I don't need know why this windy salt air gives me peace. The beauty of breaking water, disappearing the moment I see it. Number 16. What did Van Gogh see in the stars that night over 100 years ago? Where did his vision take him along the poles of light against the charm of heaven's odors, that kept him casting a feathery net on and on into the deep, dark blue of it all? And how far did he need to fine-tune the baton he used to nick the hard colors of trees? The ones gone on and on, bearing fruit of no comparison. Implements of an artist's heavenly vision of what these lights might suggest to us born as mortals, sentenced to finding justification of awe and wonder, silenced by the rise and fall of waves, surrounded by desires and glances, signed by external devices known only by thinkers and generators of capital. Why can't we just see like Van Gogh? Okay, this is an angry poem. Sorry. I get angry sometimes. Just when I thought of those assholes. I used to, sometimes I get really pissed, they'll tell you, I mean, I think it's one of the things, this whole thing of identity politics and stuff. I think, overall it's okay, but sometimes when people start telling you, you're this or you're that, that's all, no black and white, just black and white. Wait a minute, I know what I am, I know what this is. And I just get really disgusted because it's like, people are just sort of dumping their crap on you and stuff. And they should deal with their own crap first, That's what I think, I don't know. So anyway, this is called 19. Is that symbolic or what? Situate two chickens in a ring, and they will fight. Let them run wild in a yard, and they will live. These chickens drag me into this madness they call social justice. It's not social justice, it's a way to make one's ego advantageous of another. That's what it is. A fair warning, don't push me too much more. My volcano will erupt and I'll unleash a flood of magma. Stones that are ballistic and will bury you. Then what will you have to say? Will you have something to say? Or will you just give up and be roasted like a chicken in Costco? You've eaten those chickens, huh? It's pretty cheap, man, Easy meal, Huh?
$5.99.
Is it $5.99? Still, yeah, huh? I like the Polish hot dogs, but now it's not Polish hot dogs enough, So let's talk to my friends here. This poem is called 20. How I love the salt in the air and the sun warming my affair with this wind that teases me. Oh, sorry. This is kind of a sex poem kind of way. Sorry. But, you can't tell, right? 20. How I love the salt in this air and the sun warming my affair with this wind that teases me, confronts me, but more so feeds me with warm coolness. But it's the salt in the air baked on the flat black rocks that nourishes my lungs and skin, despite rough shadows of jets reminding me of tastelessness. Why do I consider the lives of those who pester me, pester all, who force us to look in fiction for the truth of our lives? Well, maybe this isn't about sex.
I'm angry again.
I'm angry again. That's an angry poem. Angry poem. No, there's a poem with sex in here. I should change the titles, I can. 23. Okay. No, this is not about sex, But 23. Here he is, the scooper of water, every day at this various spot with his net bought ages ago, patched several times with suji. Suji is, the monofilament line, fishing line. Dipping his scooper in this pond of brackish water, scooping on and on, trying to catch not fish, but the nature of water. Oh, water, how royal and religious you are. Everyone tries to capture your powers, your elusive face that challenges everyone to the ends of time. Did I say ends? Water, will you agree with me that time is a plural and not a linear equation? I know the scooper trying to find your secrets in the easiest way would possibly agree with me. I guess that's what fishing, I don't know. You're a literary critic, you should know, huh?
I'm retired.
Oh, what's the time thing, timer? Two more
2 minutes.
2 more minutes?
Yeah. That's the end of time.
Okay. Okay, I'll read one and I'll read another. Seaweed. Oh, number 34. Seaweed. What a wonderful life you have. Anchored to a rock, rolling with the waves, being free to form a fine romance with the elements. touching the sandy bottom, then pluming up to the star-dazzled surface of the waters that are always nourishing, always striking with soft palettes of recognition. Oh, seaweed, how admirably you dance between the claws of crab, through the windpipe of the moray, by the hour and on the hour of the swelling moon. Seaweed, how your salty sweet taste smacks the lips of fishermen who have not learned to dream yet, to the dance of dawn's dampening sun. Okay, one more poem, two more poems, 5 more poems?
You got one, you got
What up, 10 more minutes more?
Well, you'll have only 10 minutes to
Okay.
talk.
I'll tell you what, I'll read the last poem. Okay, so this is called 96. It's kind of like about when I was a kid, you know. But it's trying to, look back at, all the things that I, as an adult and stuff, So 96, the night with its belated shroud brings an excitement to a young boy who is brought to this beach to sleep, to play, to eat, to live this long, dateless weekend. The lights switch on and off, fly to and fro, and when the whispers of elements marks the whereabouts of thunder and sound, he can only push along in the safety of darkness, like an old blanket over his head, covering him with the smells of home. Later, when the dazzling sun breaks through the clouds of whirling synapses, he rubs his eyes and breaks a smile and tugs at the corner of the frame that has enclosed him. And in a wonder that is now, not contained in any color or smell, the boy responds once, then twice, to the sensory song he hears that he will not hear again until many, many years later. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary and Susan. So now it's like talk back. Oh, I did want to show Gary's wood block prints. They're so beautiful. So how should we progress? Like, I'll call on whoever wants to question, and you guys want to come up and.
Rather than turn our backs on the sea. No, you don't do that.
Questions? Victor.
What are your favorite emotions to write about?
What are our favorite emotions?
Emotions to write about.
Oh,
Strong ones. Anger. I do some of that too. Anger.
anger,
And more anger.
more anger. Yeah, just, I don't know, but to be sometimes just a sense of satisfaction too, resolution, I think it depends on how old you are.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say that as a practicing Buddhist, I always try for equanimity, but the emotions always come through anyway.
You have to, we're human, right, I think I'm trying to, as best I can, to be more even-tempered, but, I'm not successful, a lot of times, But yeah, that's what we are. We're emotion, that's why it's important to read books. And not play with your phone all the time. I don't know why I'm saying that. What's the connection? I don't know.
I sense in both of your works an ongoing practice in life, not just in writing. Do you have any insights or anything to say about your practices, your daily or your routine practices that feed into your art?
Well, the one thing I do, which is more shows up in the other book, is I walk my dog every day, and I take a camera and my iPhone, and it helps me to attend to the world and sort of draw out into the world rather than always doing what I did in this book, which is a lot of cogitating. So that's one practice I have, and then sometimes I'll write down stories about people that I met, or if I'm in this mode, stories about, what was going on up here.
For me, it's just trying to be in this moment, I think I spent too much time just thinking about, what's going to happen next year, 2 years? Am I going to be around? Oh man, that's terrible. But just be in a moment and enjoy people. I'm glad that my two friends up here. We get together twice a week, and before we used to surf, we used to party, we used to do stupid things. Now we eat more now. We're just eating, and we do stupid things too, but less. But it's like being in the now. I mean, I guess that in some ways that's kind of Buddhist, right?
I think as people get older, they turn into Buddhist in some weird way. I mean, you stop caring so much about all the stuff that's going on, and there is a little bit of equanimity that arrives.
But I think you still have to care,
Well, you can care too, but you don't, There's a student question?
Yes, I was going to ask you, Susan, what would you say the most challenging writing that you wrote in that was? What was the most challenging for you to write?
It's the most challenging for me to write. Sometimes when I get into some very heavy emotional or historical moment, then writing it in a weird way is difficult, but it's also helpful. I wrote a couple books about my mother's Alzheimer's. It was very helpful to write the books. It was really difficult to edit them because then I was back in that moment. Yeah.
What are you guys' biggest sources of inspiration when you guys write about poetry?
Biggest inspiration?
Yeah.
Oh.
The Seattle Mariners?
Yeah. Seattle Seahawks. Oh, I don't know what happened to them. No, I mean, I think that's a really hard question. I think you just have to have a passion. Oh, I'm sorry?
How do you come up with the names for your poems?
That was pretty hard, man.
We both had very difficult names going.
Really hard. 17? No. Could be 15. No.
4, 3, 20?
Yeah, so I didn't write the poems to get published. So I didn't have titles on them. And so when I gave it to publish, I just said, okay, number 1, number 2, and I just put it in that sequence.
Well, that's what Emily Dickinson did. So you're in very good company.
Well,
Shakespeare's sonnets were like 1 to 150 something.
129.
The Psalms, yeah.
But he was talking about what inspires, right? And it's just a matter of insight sometimes. You're just thinking about things, and sometimes mostly I write fiction, and I love also when you start developing an image. Wow, okay, I'm going to go with that. Or an idea. So people say people have writer's block. I don't have a writer's block. I just, if I have an idea, I'll just go with it. But I need time. Time is the only problem. I got to have a time to finish it, to get it all out like that. If I'm writing a short story, then give me at least a week, 2 weeks, or something like that. If I'm writing a novel, give me at least 3 months or 2 months, and stuff. But I think just being in the community and having I feel for me, and I'm quite sure with Susan too, because how she worked in the department and at UH, just the love of people, the love that you want to share these things, but at the same time too, you're saying, I have to, I want to write this thing because for the next generations and stuff, When I was, when my first son was born, I just told myself, hey, there's all these stories that are getting lost. I better write it down so at least he can, see what happened in a certain time, and also later generations and stuff,
My son tells me he doesn't really like poetry, but he does read the poems about him. And so I'm like, well, how do you know where to find them if you're not reading the book? But he thinks he knows.
Have you guys ever forced yourself to write a poem, either when you get to school or from work? And if so, could you tell the difference between your writing styles, or could you tell which one you're passionate about?
You didn't hear that? Can you tell when a poem has been written and the writer actually feels it? Or can you tell if it's been forced on you by an English professor? Well, I mean, I remember when I was in college and I was writing all these poems, and I remember I worked really hard on one of them. I labored over this poem, and my teacher gave me something like a C-. It was horrifying. And then for the last assignment, I didn't really know what I was doing, so that very morning I scribbled something, and he's like, "This is the best thing you've ever written." So sometimes it's, when it's ready to come out, it'll come out, and it's sort of easy to tell that the engine's been lubed, it's ready to go, I guess.
But you got to keep on doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a, people say it's work, but it's a labor of love kind of thing. You got to keep on doing it, work on it. When I'm writing a story, for example, or if I'm writing a novel like that, I work on it every day. I'm working on it, and I don't quit. If I stop, then I lose that continuity thing. You just have to keep, and then you're gonna have days. You're gonna have many days where what you write is like, you want to throw it out. Don't throw it out. Just keep on writing. Keep on writing. Keep on writing. And you got to get that discipline. And that's what happens. I mean, you're not given this gift or talent by God or whatever like that. You have to work on it. Reading. Looking at things. I don't know, all kinds. Just keep at it. Just keep at it. And don't worry. Okay, if an English professor says, this sucks. C- or C. You want extra credit? I'll give you an A- there. Don't. That's one kind of set of norms that you have to work with anyway. But I think when you for yourself to understand, you'll feel it. You'll feel it.
I actually think it helps if you're not necessarily trying to write about that most important thing right up front. Instead, I often gave my students little games and exercises to play. And so sometimes when you start with the material, you start with the words, you start there, and then suddenly you found your way into this thing that's important to you, but you're doing it in a way that's fresh and not contrived or, an ordeal, right? So you surprise yourself by essentially playing around. You play around, and then boom, it happens. So play's important too.
Play, and don't be afraid of making mistakes. Mistakes is where discovery is,
The more, the better.
Misspelled words. When you, for example, I play music like that, and I make a mistake. Oh, well, like Joe passed the guitars. You heard his jazz guitars. He said that if you make a so-called mistake, what makes it better is the next note. Keep on going. Keep on going. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to offend someone or whatever, or get a C or something like that. I mean, you have to have taste, of course. don't talk about some really outrageously terrible stuff. I mean, I've read some people writing about, I don't know, I don't want to say it. But there's a certain kind of sense of being human, but don't be afraid to make mistakes, and don't, and get a discipline, You figure out what it is. Someone, one person is going to say, oh, I write every, 2 hours every day. Well, I write 100 pages, every day or something like that,
Pages.
If you can do 1 page a day, but you keep at it, or 2 pages a day, or 50 words, or 100 words, or 1,000 words, you find your where you at, and that's,
You had a question?
First, I just wanted to say thank you to both of you. I really enjoyed your poetry. And especially, I did enjoy that Van Gogh poem for some reason. Loved it. I have just a curious question. Growing up, were there poems that really hit you and inspired you? And I'm curious, like what they might have been, the poems that you first felt, oh my God, that's interesting. I like poetry.
Poems?
Well, the first, I don't know if you would consider poems, but when I was a kid, I had to memorize all these church songs, and I guess those are the things that gave me a certain kind of rhythm. I'm not religious anymore, of course, but Jesus loves me, that I know, ba ba na 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 na, but you get a certain kind of feel of the rhythm, and it's because of the breathing, you're breathing, and that to me was just the beginnings of stuff, Then of course you go to school and they teach you, a tree is what Joyce Kilmer poem and stuff, those kind of things, right? And then of course you have, my mother used to sing, Korean folk songs to me and stuff, and so to this day I still remember them, and so those are kind of things that always, will be part of me, and I guess that's the beginning.
Thank you.
I had a mother who had a master's degree in drama and speech, and she was very proud of the way she read, and it was often very dramatic. And I remember she would read the Whitman poem, "Oh Captain, my Captain." And when I grew up, I realized that was really not a great poem, but she did it with such gusto that. I mean, just the love of words was in the house that way.
I went to a reading one time, and there was this guy who read a poem, but he was really dramatic. But he made and the words were just basic, simple words, right? But he made them so dramatic and was so beautiful. He would say like, the guava tree with green leaves. But and I said, oh, what's so great about that poem? But the way he said it, he emphasized on these words and how they were put together, and wow, I was like, oh, cool, man. My son was with me, he likes to write poetry too, and he was like, wow, that guy's pretty good, man, But all he did was like, guava tree has green leaves, and the fruit is pretty tasty, or something like that, Oh,
So we've been inspired by bad poems read well.
So Susan, did you question your professor's judgment when he gave you the C minus? Like maybe he just.
Oh God, this was so long ago. I probably did, but not so much. I mean, he's actually someone who pulled me aside and said, I think you're a poet. So it wasn't like he hated my poetry. He just thought that one was a real clunker. And I think it was partly because I had worked so hard at it, that it had lost its life.
That happened to me when, I was a freshman in college. I was away in the States. And, my friends and I, we used to surf at Kewalo Point, right down here, the first break, right? And I wrote a short story about that, about going to the break. And of course, I use, because we spoke pidgin, hey man, the waves look pretty cool, whatever, we spoke, and so I remember, writing it and showing it to the professor, and I said, oh, I was really excited about it. I said, oh, how was my story? And I remember she just looked at me and says, it was okay. And right off the bat, I knew she didn't get it, she didn't get it, But that set me back, because, she's, a professor, and she's supposed to know, supposed to know this stuff. It really set me back, but the fire got kind of diminished a little bit, but it was still there, So later on, I did continue to write later, but yeah. So I just have to tell you, I had to tell that story.
Question to Gary. You made quite a mention of a certain group of people did you teach at Mānoa?
Yeah.
A certain group of people, I don't want to say the word, but you said it a number of times.
But the good people?
No, the ASSH. My question though is, do you ever write poems about that, or do you kind of channel your poetry in other words, and that's more like an influence?
Yeah, I call them chickens.
Chickens. Oh, they're the chickens.
And they could be roasted like, the ones in Costco. Don't eat them raw.
I had an Australian poet friend, Adam Aitken, who came and he spent some time here, and he wrote this little book about the sheriff. And it was all set like a Western, but let's just say Gary and I would have understood really well what he was getting at.
And I think that's the best way to do it, Because, then again, too, you're not talking about one individual, but you're talking about these kinds of people, and stuff, or these kinds of elements, whatever, could be supernatural too, right, You see that a lot in the Korean dramas. Yeah, thanks for that.
Yes?
Have you two learned or discovered anything about yourselves after every book you shared with us?
Oh, it's all pretty scary, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, that's part of what it's about, is just, you can walk around really confused, and then if you write about it, then sometimes when you reread it, it suddenly makes sense. That's why I thought this, I remember this from there, but I don't know how George Floyd and the Pope sort of came together, but things like that happen. So yeah, it is a process of trying to understand. And one reason I like the meditation form is it's very much a search for meaning. So you don't always get there, and the meaning doesn't always last, but it's really fun making the attempt.
Oh, I like what she said. I agree with that. No, it's. I think you're always discovering yourself, and you're always figuring out, and it might be a different kind of, different kind of mode or different realms and stuff like that,
And it's really fun when you're young, because then you really don't know. Now it's like, oh, not this again.
No, it's fun when you're old too.
No, I know, but every so often
it's more fun.
it's.
You kind of look forward to when you get older. You get to,
We are advocates for old age.
Yeah. Who's old? That's just a 3-letter word. Okay.
Are roaches really social animals? Because
Bryant, are roaches social animals?
Yes, they appear to be, because they really like especially the young ones, they like to cluster together in places. So they prefer to be with one another, which makes me less loving of smashing them.
But it's easier to smash them.
He smashes a lot of them.
Well, there aren't so many around now that the kids aren't home.
That was wonderful.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you.